Dear students, today in this class, let us learn fourth lesson in prose of 8th standard English, known as The Boy Who Asked for More. The author of the lesson is Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens. This is a story of an orphan boy who lived in a hostel, and let us know how that boy suffered miseries in that hostel for food and for education. Before going to know about the lesson, let us know about the author Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was born in the year 1812 and died in the year 1870. He was the greatest Victorian novelist and he wrote on social evils like child labor and institutional cruelty. His most popular works are David Copperfield, A Tale of Two Cities, and Great Expectations. This extract from Oliver Twist tells us how Oliver was forced out of the poorhouse. So, Oliver Twist is also one of his famous works. Now, let us know about the lesson. First, I read first and second paragraph, and afterwards I explain you the lesson. Oliver was born in the poor house of a little country town on a cold, black night in the winter of 1837. The birth was attended by a doctor who was hastily called for the purpose and by an old pauper woman who was experienced in such matters. The mother died almost as soon as the baby took his first breath. She was a young, good-looking woman who had been found lying in the street. It was clear that she had walked some distance before she died. Her shoes had been torn into pieces. Where she had come from or where she had been going, nobody knew. Now, let us know the meanings for the difficult words. Okay, children? So, poor house. Poor house means a building where poor people or maintain at public expenses. Hastily urgently offer poor. So they are the meanings for difficult words. Now first paragraph. Oliver was born in the poor house of a little country town on a cold, black night in the winter of 1837. A boy by name Oliver Twist was born in the poor house of a small country town in the year 1837. And when Oliver was born, it was cold, dark night or black night, and it was winter season. This means Oliver Twist was born in the winter season, and that day on which Oliver was born, it was very cold and it was a dark night, and he was born in a poor house in the year 1837. The birth was attended by a doctor who was hastily called for the purpose, and by an old pauper woman who had experience in such matters. So, the birth of Oliver was attended by a doctor. Not only doctor, even the doctor called a woman, a pauper woman, a poor woman, a old woman who had much experience in such matters. Okay. So, Oliver's birth was attended by two persons. Those two persons were, one was doctor, another one was pauper woman. The mother died almost as soon as the baby took his first breath. So as soon as Oliver was born, as soon as the baby was born, mother died. So immediately after the birth of Oliver Twist, his mother died within no time. She was a young, good-looking woman who had been found laying in the street. So that woman was young. She was very young. She was good-looking, and she was found laying in the street. She had fallen on the road, and that lady was brought to poor house. There, that lady gave birth to Oliver Twist. She was good-looking woman and young. It was clear that she had walked some distance before she died. It was clear that before her death, she walked miles together. She walked a long distance. So by walking a long distance, that woman died by giving birth to Oliver Twist. Her shoes had been torn to pieces where she had come from or where she had been going, nobody knew. So, if one observes her condition, we can say it clearly, she had walked for a long distance, because the shoes which were worn by the woman were torn, and apart from that, no one knew from where she was coming and to where she was going. No one knew about this. No one knew about the place from where she had come and the place where she was going to. Third paragraph, children. The baby cried loudly. If he could have known that he was now an orphan of a poorhouse, it is likely that he would have cried still louder. They called him Oliver Twist, a name invented by Mr. Bumble, a town beadle, because he could not think of any other. Mr. Bumble had full authority over the people of the poorhouse. He thought himself a very great man indeed. He starved and ill-treated the children under his care. Oliver's 9th birthday found him a pale, thin child who had hardly known a kind word or met with a kindly look. His only friends were his little companions in misery, but in the end they brought him trouble. They persuaded him to ask for more. Now let us know the meanings for difficult words. So invented, coin, beadle, an officer, hardly known, almost not known, persuade, persuaded, convince, so third paragraph, the baby cried loudly. It is quite natural, children. Immediately after the birth, whether you or I or anybody it could be, might have cried as soon as we took birth. The same way, Oliver Twist, immediately after his birth, he started to cry loudly. And now, one more thing. If he could have known that he was now an orphan of a poor house, it is likely that he would have cried still louder. So the author says that, Charles Dickens says that Oliver Twist might have cried loudly, still loudly, or still louder if he would have known that now he is an orphan of a poor house. Because immediately after the birth of Oliver, his mother died. Now Oliver became orphan. Orphan means one who doesn't have a father, mother. So such a person is known as an orphan. So therefore, the author says that Oliver Twist could have cried loudly if he would have come to know that he would have become orphan. They called him Oliver Twist, a name invented by Mr. Bumble, the town beadle, because he could not think of any other name. So, the officer of the poorhouse, by name Mr. Bumble, he was the beadle. Beadle means an officer who looked after the poorhouse. Okay. So, Mr. Bumble coined the baby or gave a name to the baby as Oliver Twist, because he could not think of any other name. So therefore he coined the baby as Oliver Twist. Mr. Bumble had full authority over the people of the poorhouse. So Mr. Bumble, who was an officer, had complete authority. Authority means power. Complete authority over the people who were there in the poorhouse. He thought himself a very great man indeed. Mr. Bumble, the officer of the poorhouse, felt that he was a very great man. He starved and ill-treated the children under his care. Every day Mr. Bumble, what he used to do? He used to starve and ill-treat the children, the people of that poorhouse. Because he considered himself as great person, great man, and not only that, he had complete authority of the poorhouse. So therefore, he used to ill-treat the children of the poorhouse and used to make the children to be starved. Oliver's 9th birthday found him a pale, thin child who had hardly known a kind word or met with a kindly look. So normally on the day of birthday, usually what happens, the children enjoy a lot. The children who have parents, they enjoy a lot because on that day they wear new clothes and they take whatever they want, they enjoy sweets, everything. But here it is totally different in this lesson, in this story. Oliver Twist, on his 9th birthday, he was very pale. He was sad, so sad, because he could not hear a kind word for him on that day or a kindly look towards him on that particular day, because no one was there to wish him, no one was there to enjoy with him, no one was there to speak him good words. Therefore, he was very pale on that day. His only friends were the little companions in misery. Who were his companions? They were also very young, small children who had suffered misery a lot. But in the end, they brought him trouble. Though they were friends, but they brought him a trouble. What was that trouble? Let us know. They persuaded him to ask for more. So all the little boys of that poorhouse went to Oliver Twist and told him, persuaded him, convinced him that he must ask for more food. Must ask for more food. Now, 5th paragraph. It happened one evening at the supper time The children were fed in a large stone hall with a big metal basin at one end. The master stood by the basin and served each child with a small bowl of watery gruel. Boys generally have excellent appetites. Oliver and his companions were always hungry and never gave enough to eat. That evening, one of the bigger boys stated quite clearly that unless he had an extra bowl of gruel, he would most certainly eat the boy who slept next to him. He had a wild and hungry eye, so the smaller boys believed him. A council was held. Oliver Twist was appointed to walk up to the master after supper and asked for more. So, the boys in the poorhouse convinced Oliver Twist to ask for more. So, thereby one day what happened? One evening at the supper time. So, normally what happens, children? The meal which we take in the morning, that is called breakfast or tiffin. The meal which we take in the afternoon, it is called lunch, and the meal which we take in the night, it is called supper. And suppose someone invites you for food, or someone invites you to function, and if you are provided a special food there in that function, so such a meal is called dinner. So morning meal, breakfast or tiffin, afternoon meal, lunch, and night meal, supper. If someone invites and provides food, that too special food, so such a food is called dinner. Now, one evening what happened? At the supper time, all the children were fed in a large stone hall with a big metal basin at one end. So all the children were in one room in a big hall. There food was provided. So the master stood by the basin and served each child with a small bowl of watery gruel. A big metal basin was kept. In that metal basin there was watery food called gruel, and that was served to children. The master stood by the side of the basin and taking food, that watery food, gruel, from the basin used to serve the children. Boys generally have excellent appetites. Actually, the nature of the boys is to eat more and they feel more hungry. So therefore, they want to eat more. This is the nature of the boys. Oliver and his companions were always hungry and never given enough to eat. Oliver and his friends in the poorhouse, they used to feel hungry every time because they did not get enough food to eat. Okay, so therefore they used to feel hungry always as they were not getting enough food to eat. That evening, one of the bigger boys stated quite clearly that unless he had an extra bowl of gruel, he would most certainly eat the boy who slept next to him. So one bigger boy among those boys told clearly that if he is not provided extra bowl of gruel, definitely he would eat the boy who sleeps next to him. So all the children in that poor house were afraid of that big boy, and they believed that big boy that he would going to eat someone who sleeps next to him. He had a wild and angry eye. So he had a wild and angry eye. So therefore all the small boys in the poor house believed his words. Therefore what happened? A council was held. All the boys joined together. They discussed it. And thereby what happened? Oliver Twist was appointed to walk up to the master after supper and ask for more. So they selected Oliver Twist, okay, to go to the master and ask for more gruel, more food. The gruel was served out and was quickly swallowed. The boys whispered among themselves and forced Oliver to go. He advanced to the master, bowl in hand, and said in a little frightened voice, "Please, sir, I want some more." The master was a fat, healthy man, but he turned very pale at this. "What?" he said, as if he could not believe his ears. "Please, sir, I want some more." So after the supper, now all the boys made Oliver Twist to go to the master and ask for more. The gruel was served to all the children, but what the children did? They swallowed it quickly. The gruel which was served by master. So that gruel was swallowed by the children quickly. And the boys whispered among themselves and forced Oliver to go. All the boys spoke in a low voice, and finally they forced Oliver Twist to go to the master. He advanced to the master. Oliver Twist advanced towards the master, went to master, in hand a bowl. By taking a bowl, he went to the master and said in a little frightened voice, he was fear of the master. In a frightened voice, he asked the master, what did he ask? "Please, sir, I want some more." So Oliver Twist asked for some more food. The master was fat, healthy man. So how was the master? The master was very fat and healthy. He turned very pale at this. When Oliver Twist asked for more food, this master turned pale. What he said? What he said? As if he could not believe his ears. So the master asked him, "What? What do you want?" He could not believe ears. "Please, sir, I want some more." Once again, Oliver Twist asked the master to give him some more food. 7th paragraph. The master aimed a blow at his hand, seized him by his arms, and shouted for Beadle. Mr. Bumble rushed into the room in a great excitement and was filled with horror when he heard of Oliver's crime. "Ask for more," he exclaimed. "I never heard of such a thing. Depend on it, this miserable boy will be hung." So, the meaning of excitement means feeling strongly. Horror means feeling of extreme fear. When Oliver Twist asked the master to give him more food, the master, who was fat and healthy, wanted to give a blow to his head. He wanted to beat him on his head, and seized his arms, held his arms, okay, and shouted for the officer. By holding his arms, the master called Mr. Bumble. So Mr. Bumble ran into the room in an excitement. So was filled with horror when he heard of Oliver's crime. So Mr. Bumble, who was an officer, was filled with the horror when he came to know about the crime of Oliver Twist. What was the crime that was made by Oliver Twist? He didn't made any crime, but he asked for some more food. That itself was crime for the master and the officer. I never heard of such a thing. Depend on it, this miserable boy will be hung. Till now I didn't heard such words in this poorhouse. So this fellow must be hung. As a punishment for his greed and boldness, Oliver was immediately locked in a room to spend the night alone. Early next morning, a notice was pasted on the outside of the gate, offering a reward of £5 to any man or woman who would take Oliver Twist off the hands of the poorhouse. So, as a punishment for the greed and boldness of Oliver Twist, he was locked up in the room for whole night, entire night alone. And next morning, the officer, what he did, he pasted a notice outside the gate. What it was written? It was written that £5 will be given for any man or woman who take Oliver Twist out of the poorhouse. So the officer decided to send Oliver Twist out of the poorhouse. So this is all about the story of an orphan, a young boy who suffered misery without food, without enough food, and as well as without enjoying his life. Every day he used to suffer a lot. So no one was there to speak some good words or words of happiness to him. So therefore Oliver Twist suffered a lot. So this is all about the story of a poor boy by name Oliver Twist, the boy who asked for more, written by Charles Dickens. Thanks a lot.